And hello again, YouTube. It's kind of turning into a habit at this point, just randomly starting a video whenever I'm driving to work. Of course, work tonight, being that it's Thursday, is Bollocks Cocktails. Got my weekly karaoke show going on there. By the way, it is 7:44 p.m. Thursday, October 27th, 2022. And it just occurred to me I should probably check my Google Traffic View before heading out, because I did look at it about 45 minutes ago, and I think there were like 3 accidents on the freeways between my place and Bollocks. Hopefully they got that cleared up. Oh, and of course, yeah, it looks good. Yeah, it's cleared up. So, I kind of wish I had some free space on my phone to have shot video on the drive home from Amazon this morning. I mean, to be clear, I did have plenty of free space on my iPhone, but I had my last video all edited and ready to export in iMovie. I got it done during one of my breaks at Amazon, and it was giving me that bullshit of, you don't have enough space to export your video, when of course I've got, you know, a remarkably huge amount of free space. Just for some reason it can't seem to access it. I've kind of got a theory as to why that is. Even though I have an iPhone 7 Plus with 128 megs of RAM, internal storage, or sorry, 128 gigs of RAM internal storage. I restored it from an image of my old iPhone 6s Plus in hopes that everything would just log in, which of course it hasn't worked out for me, but at least it got all my apps and stuff there and all my configuration the way I like it. But I've noticed on occasion that like when I log in with this phone and then I get a notification telling me, hey, you received a login on your account, and it was from, it'll say it's from from an iPhone 6s Plus, which this is not a 6s Plus, it's a 7 Plus. But apparently there's enough residual of the image of the 6s Plus that some websites think I'm using the 6s Plus. So I'm wondering if maybe, just maybe, iMovie, since it was originally installed on the 6s Plus, which was a 64 gig phone, I'm wondering if perhaps it thinks I only have 64 gigs of available RAM, because that's what it had when it was installed and when it was originally installed, and it can't see the other 64 gigs. I don't know, just theory. Anyway, because I didn't want to make my space situation even worse, because I was unable to export it, I had to clear stuff off in order to make space to clear stuff and to export that. I didn't shoot video, and I really regret having not done it, because there was a fatal accident early this morning. Not that I saw the fatal accident or anything, I just was dealing with the traffic aftermath of it. But there was a fatal accident this morning on the I-10 eastbound, approaching 59th Avenue, where all the exit ramps and stuff are splitting off to the 202 South Mountain Freeway headed south, which is a freeway I use very, very little, other than, you know, popping on 59th Avenue, which is its access road between Buckeye and Van Buren, headed to work sometimes. So anyway, I had one of those moments where I'm thinking, damn, I should really be the traffic guy at KTAR, because they were, now, props to KTAR. As soon as I got in my car and I turned on the, started up, turned on the radio, and I bolted out the door I was standing there waiting at the clock when it turned, at the time clock when it turned 5:30. And it's kind of funny, I was working, I believe my last day, at least my last day is being like forcefully assigned there by Amazon in Prep Receive. Although I'll be honest, Prep Receive is actually really growing on me. And there have been a handful of, I can name a couple of guys actually three different people that usually work inbound docks with me that are choosing to stay in Prep Receive. Two of which are regularly water spiders, one of which usually works in pre-sort, which is also a line loading position. It's just a different type of line loading. But anyway, yeah, it is growing on me. But anyway, so one thing that often happens in that department is everybody kind of hangs out. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people will kind of hang out and try to catch up with managers and be like, "Hey, what was my rate? What was my rate? What was my rate?" I've made it clear in very bold terms, to the point of just being rude and weird about it, that I don't give a fuck what my rate is. Which is funny, because usually the people that have that attitude about rate are that way because they just have a problem with they're not on task very much, or they're slow or whatever. My issue with it is it's a manipulated false metric that shows a very small amount of the picture. And one of the best analogies I was able to give to one of my coworkers is, okay, let's say we're trying to provide group to a large amount of people, and one guy brings 6 chickens and another guy brings a cow. Who brought more food? I mean, it's a no-brainer, the guy that brought the cow. You're not feeding nearly as much with 6 chickens. But the way rate is calculated, hey, one guy brought 6 and the one guy only brought 1. So you're going to chastise the guy who brought the full cow and say, well, damn, your rate was only 1. This guy's here, his rate was 6. And that in a nutshell explains what's wrong with rate being the sole metric for receive and the receive department at Amazon. Although that stated, it largely shows people who are manipulating and deliberately grabbing boxes that will bump up your rate, and avoiding boxes that will take down your rate. I don't avoid anything. In fact, I tend to, when I start picking stuff, it's, if I start selectively picking specific boxes, it's because I've done that item and I know exactly how to configure the tote to its maximum capacity, to where it's perfectly well balanced and it's used to its fullest potential. And I'm just wanting to stay on a rhythm with the same product until that product runs out. Or sometimes I've realized a combination of 2 different products, where one of those products on its own, you end up with 1 or 2 items in the tote and a lot of empty space that a third item of that item doesn't fit. But I've realized that 2 different items will fill the tote perfectly, so I'm trying to handpick those items. And if I'm only putting 3 items in a tote, yeah, that's gonna result in me not having a good rate, because what bumps up your rate is when you can find a case, or as they call it, a source container that has a large amount of small identical products. And you can, like, I had one point where I pushed through a tote that I think had 100. I can only imagine what my rate was in the last hour, because I had 2 totes I was sitting on that I could have finished quickly, but I'm more concerned about, and at first it seemed like the problem solvers were a little bothered that I was bothering them about this, and then I kind of explained my concern about it, and the PAs were just like, why does that matter? I'm like, you want to talk about safety issues? This is the kind of safety issue that could ultimately result in a flipped semi-truck. Kind of a big deal, don't you think? But when I was getting items, and as you're putting items in the tote, the computer is calculating what the weight is based on what the weight is in the system of each item I'm putting it in. Well, if the first one that caught my eyes, I had two rather heavy items that felt like they were probably about 20 pounds each, and the maximum capacity of the tote is I want to say 28 pounds, and they prefer to keep them around 25. So so I put these two items in the tote, and I'm looking to see what the weight is, because it's like, God, that's gotta be really pushing the limit. Generally speaking, like if you're trying to put in too much weight in the tote, you'll get an error that tells you take that item out and put it in your next tote. You know, you've gone overweight. Anyway, I look at the weight, and it said 0 pounds, 0.06 ounces, and I'm like, oh really? This feels like it's possibly an overweight tote, and it says nothing. Yeah, that's a problem. That's not a problem as far as the computer. The computer thinks everything's just fine. Look, there's hardly any weight in here. Just send it on down the line. Keep putting more stuff in there if it fits. You know, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, wow. As somebody who loads trucks for Amazon, weight is very important, because that needs to be on the roster for. It needs to be on the roster for, for the truck driver. So when they go through port of entries and stuff, and they have their weight checked, this is what my load is supposed to weigh. Well, if you've got a whole bunch of totes that have, 30 plus pounds in them, that say they have just over half a pound in them, with that kind of a discrepancy times, 150 totes, that's a problem. That's a big problem. And that's the kind of problem that could really, cause an overloaded, unsafely loaded trailer. So I'm looking at that and kind of doing the exponential math in my head, going, yeah, this is, look at the light show, nifty. And thinking, yeah, this is a problem. Well, I stuck one aside, and I mentioned it to a problem solver, like, oh, okay, well, I'll get, or I mentioned it, I think, to a PA who was like, well, okay, we'll just, hit your end on, and a problem solver will take care of it when they get to you. At that point, I looked in the line and I realized that the cases that those were coming out of was like all that was on the line as far as I could see, and that like that was what was hitting all the people near me. And I'm thinking, man, these drones are just trying to make rate. All the people upstream are skipping this box because they know there's not that many items in it, so they can't hit a high rate with it. And all the people downstream are just like trying to make rate, and they're doing them as quick as possible, to the point they're not even paying attention to this weight discrepancy. And I don't even have any other boxes I can pull on, and yeah, I need to escalate this. So I went and talked to this one disabled problem solver, who's a lot easier to find because she doesn't get around as well. And when I explained her the issue, she did escalate it. She actually immediately prepped up a tote to go to ATAC, which is an department that takes pictures of items and weighs items and measures items to get the information to the computer. And if something's incorrect in the computer, they're the ones that fix it. So she immediately got that to an ATAC container. And a little while bit later, she actually rolled up to me on her wheelchair and was like, wow, thanks for pointing that out. And I guess the item ended up being about 18 pounds. There was another guy, and I guess he just got promoted to kind of a management position in another building. So today was his last day there. I've only talked with him a couple of times in passing, but super nice guy. But he was also trying to bring that issue to their attention. And what was the big red flag for him was that he noticed, because 3 of those items fit in a tote, he saw another person working in receive that was putting 3 of those in a tote. So I mean, we're talking just under 28. If it was 18 pounds times 3, we're looking at 20, 40, 60 minus 6, so 54 pounds roughly in a tote that's only able to accommodate 28 pounds. And it's not that the tote can't hold additional weight. The tote is plenty capable of holding additional weight. The issue is actually the robotic palletizer, which stacks all the totes onto stacks and sorts all the totes onto pallets. And I haven't really talked much about the robotic palletizer. I've been trying to find a really good video on YouTube of a robotic palletizer and what it does, because they're absolutely fascinating to watch. And I did find some other robotic palletizers, but the actual Amazon one, I haven't been able to find a really good video. But I did find a video which focuses more on the picking sorting robots, but it does show the palletizer a little bit, and I'll try to link that to this. But yeah. Something that's that overweight is going to really fuck with the palletizer, and result in the palletizer either not being able to lift it, or possibly dropping it, or worse yet, damaging an extremely expensive robot. So yeah, he was, and then there's other things, other ways that, like, that tote is only supposed to go, I think most of the lines can handle 50 pounds, but being that this particular line is only supposed to have totes on it, it might not be able to handle that kind of weight. But he's like, yeah, these people are not paying attention. It's letting them put 3 items in the box, like when I brought it up, my immediate response is, hey, we need to pull all these boxes off the line. Just like, we know what these cases look like. We need to get an empty pallet or a U-boat. A U-boat is like a cart on wheels that holds a lot of boxes. It's narrow and long. We need to get one of those here and just get all this shit off the line. I'm not a manager, so I don't make those decisions. I mean, I can suggest stuff, and when I suggest stuff like that in inbound, the managers tend to listen to me. They're usually like, "Oh God, Dan, you're on, and thank you." Whereas, when I'm staying, they're looking at me like, "Who the fuck are you?" Yeah, you're a trainee in this department. You're like, yeah, I'm a trainee that understands the consequences of weight being off and can do exponential math in my head without even trying, because I'm kind of autistic. So probably should pay attention to this shit. Anyway, it did end up getting corrected. Now, I'm not sure how much got thrown with the wrong weight in it, or too many in the totes. I certainly didn't hear anything about it causing any problems, which is a good thing. And because I escalated it to the problem solver, it did get what do you call it? It did get to ATAC pretty quickly, and she did come and she thanked me and said what the correct weight was, and yeah, so she did tell me what the correct weight was. And I would imagine at that point, like the way the system works, that anything that was overloaded, with where it was showing the original weight, that it would globally change it. So at least as those totes are getting loaded, their correct weight would be, by the time those totes actually made it to the point of getting loaded on a truck, their weight, even if those, and I would imagine there's some kind of red flag in the system going, hey, whoa, this tote is severely overweight, and somebody in outbound was able to correct that. I hope. I don't know. Haven't heard about it. I'm definitely looking forward to talking about that situation though with the people, the management in outbound, where we deal with it on the other end of that line. Since I believe I'm going to be probably back to loading trucks in outbound on Sunday. Actually, I'm come to think of it, I'm working tomorrow night. I might be doing it tomorrow night. I don't know. Anyway, I need to get inside. I didn't even get around to talking about the consequences of the fatal accident on I-10. I'll try to talk about that on the next video, because it was very, very fascinating. And KTAR was giving really bad traffic advice as far as how to get around the problem. And I was listening to it, and part of me wanted to try to call in or text them and correct them, and part of it was like, no, you keep giving them bad traffic advice, because it looks like people looking at my traffic view, I'm like, it looks like people are following that, and that's keeping people off the road I need to get on, that's going to get me around this fast. And consequently, I think I got home like, I want to say 10 minutes sooner than normal. One point where I really pay attention to what time, when I'm driving home, that I pay attention to what time it is this where Loop 202 splits off the mini stack where the 51 and the I-10 come together, which is kind of interesting because at that point I-10 does like a 90-degree turn and heads from going eastbound to south, whereas the 202 keeps heading eastbound. So kind of confusing. Like, I'm actually going east, but if you follow the signs that say I-10 east, you're going south, you're turning and going south. It's just how our freeways are. I've seen most cities, their freeways are even wonkier than ours are, so, can't really complain. But it is a little confusing sometimes, especially when when I'm headed west, but I'm on the I-10 east, but I'm actually going south, so it's taking me in the direction of west, which I do that almost every day. Anyway, so a lot of times I try to I always try to get to that intersection before 6 a.m. because if I get there before 6 a.m. I can use the left exit, the HOV exit to the 202, which is a lot smoother transition on the 202. But after 6 a.m. it becomes restricted for carpools, two or more occupants, and I'm just driving by myself. So I think, granted, a lot of people just don't care and do it anyway. I try not to be one of those people. It is a pretty pricey fine if you get caught. Not that that's why I don't do it. I just don't like to be that asshole. But so sometimes, like, as I'm approaching it, I'm watching the clock and I'm like, I'm not gonna make it there by 6. I need to get to the right. And I think I went by that intersection at like 5:50 a.m. So yeah, way ahead of schedule. I made amazingly good time in spite of a traffic disaster that someone lost their life in, and that's tragic. But yeah, it was just all they were talking about on the radio. Anyway, I'd love to explain more about that, but I gotta get inside and set up my show. It's that time. Oh, I forget who's playing Thursday night football today, but I know it's two teams no one gives a crap about. I actually sent a text to Mario, and he was like, yeah, there's nobody there. I got bored and left. So, yeah, so they're going to be wanting me to start music as soon as I can. Wow, your curse here sounds awful, dude. Now Mirror's bumping bass and trunk rattling. That's not a good sound.